Ruth Bader Ginsburg is back in the hospital again. A Rose Garden speech turns into a political debate over the Hatch Act. The Squad may be in trouble and be facing backlash. And Burger King hates cow farts. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning and welcome to Contemporary. I'm your host, Jay Edgar. We've got a bunch to get to today. All kinds of stuff, including how much longer can a 1,000-year-old woman actually sit up on the bench? That's the question that's going to be going through a lot of things right now. But before we get started, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com, is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We've got my shows. We've got Stephen Ignoramus, who is also streaming right now as well. We've got The Generational Gap. We've got Wyatt Birkenhoff and The Breakdown. We have got The Freckles and Brit Show, and we've got The R-Rated Conservative. So come on over and check us all over there. Check out some of our merch and help us support some great creators. All right, we're going to start into stocks today as we look up onto the chart, and we see that these stocks have gone not way up, but relatively up compared to what they were, because we had a pretty good downswing when we looked at the chart yesterday, and now we're looking at a pretty good upswing all across the day. A couple things happen across the day that we're going to be looking at and seeing what happens with there, including the Rose Garden speech, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg may actually play into this as well, but we'll see what happens. Out of Investors Business Daily. Tax day in July. Taxes are confusing. Investing shouldn't be. Get Market Smith and find better stocks in half the time. There you go, guys. Head on over and go buy some app from Investors Business Daily, because that's what they think the news is. All right. In reality, outside of my editorial on advertising, we have got Dow Jones Futures signal stock market rally on Moderna coronavirus vaccine news. Goldman earnings, Tesla gains on Cybertruck tax breaks. From Ed Carson, Dow Jones Futures and S&P 500 futures jumped early Wednesday, while NASDAQ futures rose only modestly after Moderna reported a robust response to its coronavirus vaccine candidate, while Goldman Sachs and United Health reported blowout earnings. On Tuesday, the coronavirus stock market rally showed resilience yet again, with the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and NASDAQ reclaiming or rebounding from key technical levels. Moderna said late Tuesday that all 45 patients in a phase 1 trial showed a robust response following 2 doses of the experimental coronavirus vaccine that sent Moderna stock soaring to a buy point. Apple has held up well with tight closes over the last several sessions. Apple stock rose 2% Wednesday after winning an EU court ruling that says Apple doesn't have to pay $15 billion back into taxes in Ireland. Tesla nudged higher Tuesday amid mixed headlines with modest pre-market on Cybertruck plant tax breaks. Neither Apple stock nor Tesla stock is anywhere close to a potential buy point. Meanwhile, chip equipment maker ASML reported weaker than expected quarter 2 results. ASML stock is a top semiconductor play. Dow Jones giant United Health disclosed earnings that nearly doubled, but revenue slightly missed. Fellow Dow Jones Industrial Average component Goldman Sachs crushed on EPS and ad revenue. ASML stock fell modestly and United Health edged higher. Goldman stock rose. Both UNH stock and GS stock are near buy points and were strong performers on Tuesday. Apple stock and Tesla stock are on the IBD leaderboard. United Health stock is on IBD long-term leaders list. Dow Jones futures jumped 1.9% versus fair value, rallying on the Moderna coronavirus vaccine news as well as components such as Apple, Goldman, and Pfizer. S&P 500 futures advanced 1.2%. NASDAQ 100 futures rose just 0.3% as techs appear to be in less favor right now. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. President Trump late Tuesday signed legislation imposing some sanctions versus China over Hong Kong. He also signed an executive order ending Hong Kong's preferential treatment, citing the enclave's loss of autonomy. That move had been expected following U.S. official statements in the wake of China's new national security law on Hong Kong. So we've got a couple things going on here. It looks like even with a sanction on China, we're looking at the fact that we're going to see stocks going up, which is, I think, going to be good. I'm starting to look at some of these numbers here, starting to see what's going on with all this, and realize that the markets are expecting Trump to win coming up in November, and they're starting to reflect that. And we'll read an article where one of these scholars actually sat down and analyzed why he thinks Trump will win. And I think that news is starting to trickle down as well. But let's move on and see what NBC has to say about this. From CNBC, from Fred Inbert and Yoon Lee, Dow futures surged 500 points after Goldman's blowout quarter. Moderna's vaccine news. Stock futures jumped Wednesday after drug developer Moderna said its coronavirus vaccine produced antibodies in all patients in an early trial, raising hopes for a faster economic recovery. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped 503 points, or 1.9%. S&P 500 futures climbed 1.4%. NASDAQ 100 futures rose 0.6%. Sentiment also lifted by blowout quarterly numbers from Goldman Sachs, which sent the stock up more than 4%. The company's results... Okay, that video didn't need to move there. That company's results were driven by a 93% surge in trading revenue. Moderna's potential vaccine to prevent COVID-19 produced a robust immune response, or neutralizing antibodies, in all 45 patients in its early-stage human trial. How's the reception on their human trackers, though? That's what we actually have to look at. According to newly released data published Tuesday evening in the peer-reviewed New England Journal of Medicine, shares of Moderna surged 15% in pre-market trading. Stocks directly tied to an economic reopening jumped following the vaccine news. American Airlines, United Airlines, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line all popped more than 7% each in pre-market trading. Hey, if the cruise ships go up and get running, hey, maybe I'll do that next year. I know my vacation resets in November, so... This should further increase confidence that we're getting a robust immune response, and that there should be greater confidence that this will be protective to a degree in transmission of COVID, Michael Yee, a managing director at Jefferies, said on CNBC's Fast Money. This is all along our positive thesis and our view that both Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech are definitely on good track to get a vaccine by the end of the year. Stocks finished Tuesday's volatile session on a high note, with the Dow jumping more than 500 points to post its best day in 2 weeks. The S&P 500 jumped 1.3%, boosted by cyclical names sensitive to the economic recovery. The tech-heavy NASDAQ underperformed for a second day, rising 0.9% as the massive rally in big tech slowed down. So, chips are up, some of the travel stuff is going back up, and everybody's reacting to the fact that we're going to see a vaccine. So, get those stocks now, because it looks like they're going to go up again. Alright, we are going to stick with CNBC for right now, because that seemed to be the most neutral platform that I saw on this story here. But we'll get into the news at this point here from CNBC Politics. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg hospitalized for possible infection from Jacob Pramuk. By the way, I hope nobody expects me to be objective on this one. I'm going to kind of dance in the fact that she's back in the hospital once again. It's probably terrible, and I'm probably going to go to hell over it, but this woman should just retire and spend some time with her family if she doesn't want to be in this public eye anymore. But let's see what CNBC has to say. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was hospitalized Tuesday for a possible infection, according to a spokeswoman for the court. The Justice, 87, received treatment at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore after experiencing fever and chills. She underwent a procedure to clean a bile duct stent and will stay in the hospital for a few days, the court spokeswoman, Kathleen Arberg, said in a statement. Guys, I gotta tell you this right now. If RBG kicks the bucket, you are going to see chaos. If you think that the Chaz and the Chop, the BLM, the Wendy's Autonomous Zone, what they're doing in Portland, or anything else you have seen thus far this year was chaos, you have not seen any chaos yet. Because as soon as RBG drops, every one of these kids, especially the ones that are all in for abortion, are going to be out in the streets screaming. So if this happens before the election, brace yourselves and get ready to defend your homes. That's all that I have to say about this woman, because it is going to be hell on earth. The justice is resting comfortably and will stay in the hospital for a few days to receive intravenous antibiotic treatment, she said. Ginsburg, the oldest Supreme Court justice, has endured a range of health issues in recent years. In January, she was cancer-free after undergoing a treatment for what was likely pancreatic cancer last year. You know, that thing that has like a day's worth of survivability. This year before, or the year before rather, she underwent treatment for cancerous growths on her lungs. Ginsburg and the rest of the court just concluded a flurry of work, issuing rulings on President Trump's financial records, LGBTQ rights, abortion rights, and the president's efforts to shut down the Obama-era program to shield dreamers from deportation, among other topics, in a 2-week period. President Bill Clinton appointed Ginsburg, a liberal stalwart, to the top U.S. court in 1993. The court has currently a 5-4 conservative majority. I don't know where the fuck they're getting conservative majority from. These justices are supposed to be apolitical, and they're just calling conservative or liberal or whatever else based on who appointed them. Though it stymied some of the Republican Trump's priorities in its recent decisions, drawing the president's ire. No, he put constitutionalists up, and they followed the Constitution. But yes, if Ginsburg kicks at this point, it's going to be chaos. Because there is enough time. I mean, you are not going to see the long, drawn-out hearing. As hard as they try and keep the hearings going, you're not going to see the long, drawn-out hearings that you saw with Kavanaugh. And remember, you saw next to nothing with Gorsuch either. Oh, I dread the day if she kicks under this administration. And she's not, if Trump gets reelected, which I think is a very strong chance still, she's not going to make it through his second term. Trump is going to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg if he gets reelected. It's a fact of life at this point. And there is a good chance in 4 months that he does it in this term. So we will see what happens with this, but this is going to be chaos. All right, I've got one that I archived from Business Insider because they are bastards with their ad blocker software. Ad blocker software, even better. But I archived it up so I could read it to you here. So apparently Trump made a speech in the Rose Garden. Everyone thinks it violated the Hatch Act, which I will be looking into exactly what the Hatch Act is a little bit later on today and figuring out why this was a violation, because I am woefully ignorant to what it is, but that's what they tried to claim today. But from Business Insider, Trump broke presidential protocol by turning a standard White House press statement into a rambling, rally-like attack on Joe Biden. From Tom Porter. President Trump broke White House protocol on Tuesday using a Rose Garden speech to launch a series of rally-like attacks on his Democratic presidential rival, Joe Biden. The rambling, hour-long speech on Tuesday afternoon had been billed as a statement by the president on the situation in Hong Kong, where China recently unveiled a draconian new security law that has already had a chilling effect on pro-democracy protests. But Trump repeatedly veered off topic and attacked Biden, the presumptive 2020 Democratic presidential nominee, instead. At one point, he listed a series of claims about Biden that appeared to have been drawn from an opposition research document. Oh, you mean like the Steele dossier? Is that what you mean by opposition research document? Because that's what that was. And you felt the need to clog up the courts for 3 years trying to get that shit pushed through. The speech came days after the president was forced to cancel a re-election rally in New Hampshire on Saturday. According to NBC News, advisors feared low attendance caused by coronavirus fears and bad weather forecasts. Instead, the president launched the rally-style partisan speech in the setting of the Rose Garden, which historically has been where the president delivers official announcements and not campaign speeches. Though the Hatch Act of 1939 bars White House officials from political campaigning, it does not apply to the president. Many observers, however, saw Trump's use of the Rose Garden speech to attack Biden as a serious breach of protocol. Trump began by announcing his plans to sign into law a congressional bill sanctioning China over its Hong Kong crackdown before launching into attacks on Biden. Joe Biden's entire career has been a gift to the Chinese Communist Party and a calamity of errors they've made, Trump said. Later, Trump started listing a series of policies he claimed had been drawn up by a task force of staffers working for Biden and the former Democratic presidential candidate, Bernie Sanders. Trump said Biden was seeking to abolish prisons and mandate net zero carbon emissions for homes, offices, and all new buildings by 2030, which he claimed basically means no windows, no nothing. Earlier, Biden had given a speech in Delaware in which he unveiled a $2 trillion plan to cut carbon emissions, and yet we still have no idea how any of this shit's going to get paid for. At one point in the Rose Garden speech, Trump also asked, "Where's Hunter?" a popular catchphrase at the president's campaign rallies that alludes to unsubstantiated allegations that Biden's son Hunter's work in the Ukraine. I'm pretty sure they're substantiated at this point. Trump trails Biden in national polls amid criticism of Trump's response to the George Floyd anti-racism protests and the coronavirus pandemic, with infection rates still climbing in many states. So, yeah, of course, I have not listened to the speech. I will be doing so once again later today to see what happened with this. I've got a half an hour. I can probably find it on a podcatcher and bump it up to double speed, so I want to listen to this. I'm going to see what exactly was said, because Business Insider has an agenda, just like a lot of other people, and I will be reading the Hatch Act to see exactly what is being said here, but because we will definitely talk about this on Monday. This is really, really big news, so we'll see what goes on with this. But yes, he's winning, so they don't want him to. All right, from ABC News, they're pulling the dumpster. President Trump's dysfunctional upbringing created a dangerous situation for Americans, Niece claims, from Mike Levine. President Donald Trump grew up in a dysfunctional family that believed money stood in for acts of love and whose patriarch used his own kin as pawns, creating a dangerous situation for America decades later, the commander-in-chief's niece warned in an exclusive interview with ABC News. And I knew exactly what was going to fucking come out of this. I haven't listened to this one either, but I knew what this was going to be when I saw that Good Morning America was the one that was up there and touting this, because they wouldn't be touting it if it was warm and friendly to the president. They would have ignored it, and they probably wouldn't have aired the thing. But they knew what was coming. They knew that this was going to be a slam fest for the president, and they decided they needed to put it up and go up and advertise it for. I wonder how much this woman got paid. He's utterly incapable of leading this country, and it's dangerous to allow him to do so, Mary Trump told ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos. She said, wait, George Stephanopoulos, you mean the Clinton operative, George Stephanopoulos? She said, it's impossible to know who Donald might have been had he been born into a different family, but his father, Fred Trump, was a sociopath who pushed his children to succeed at all costs. I don't know, I would probably push my kids to do the same thing. That's how my parents pushed me. To view people as expendable, to do anything to get attention, financial rewards, and to win. Mary Trump's own father, Fred Trump Jr., the president's eldest brother, didn't conform to these family standards and was punished for being kind, for being generous, and for having interests outside what my grandfather thought was acceptable, she claimed. But Donald Trump's clearly learned the lesson from watching his older brother and seeing how poorly his brother was treated by the family patriarch in return, she said. Donald's father was incredibly driven in a way that turned other people, including his children and wife, into pawns to be used to his own ends, Mary Trump said. The exclusive interview with ABC News came Tuesday as Simon & Schuster released her much-anticipated... There it is. She's selling a book. Released her much-anticipated book, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. The book presents a scathing depiction of the sitting president, largely drawing, Mary Trump says, from the author's own memories, conversations with family members, and legal, financial, and family documents. So, here's what happened. This is speculation, keep in mind. This is my opinion. This is not backed up by facts or anything. Fred Jr. didn't get the money. He got kicked out of the family. And he went through, because I've seen this in my own family. I see a lot of this going through one side of my family especially. One person got ostracized and spent the rest of his life going out and railing against the people of the family that got successful. They went and did that, and now they're sitting back there. She's bitter because she doesn't have Trump money, and she's writing a book. She wants advertising for that, and it's an easy avenue to come down and take out the current sitting president that all the mainstream media hates. This is... I don't put any stock into what this is. And once again, I'm going to go and listen to this because... Yeah, we're going to hold on to this one here. I'm going to listen to this because I actually want to see what she said, but I've got an idea what this is already. All right, let's keep moving. From Fox, Hillary Clinton on The Daily Show, Americans should be ready if Trump won't go quietly after the election. Hillary says if Trump won't go quietly after the election. Hillary Clinton said that. Let's see what she had to say from Tyler McCarthy. Hillary Clinton appeared as a guest on Monday's episode of The Daily Show, where host Trevor Noah sat in his laundry room and asked the former Secretary of State about the potential changing of powers at the White House after November's election. The former Democratic presidential nominee appeared virtually for an interview on what Noah has been calling the daily social distancing show amid the coronavirus pandemic. Their friendly interview quickly turned to the topic of voter suppression, with Clinton taking a jab at the Republican leaders, alleging they're trying to stifle votes from people they believe will vote blue in November. Republicans have two prongs to their strategy to win, she explained. The first is to try and prevent as many people who they think won't vote for them from voting, so make the lines really long. That's done at the locality, you dumb bitch. Where young people vote or African Americans vote or Hispanics vote, try to make vote by mail as difficult as possible. Claim it's fraudulent when indeed it's not. In fact, that's how Donald Trump votes, and everyone knows about vote by mail understands that. No, they are trying to conflate vote by mail with absentee ballots. They're not the same thing. They look the same, and they'll try and convince you that it's the same, but they are not the same fucking thing. With that, Noah asked if she believes President Trump, who has repeatedly said in the past that voter fraud is an issue with voting by mail, will attempt to use the vast number of Americans likely to vote by mail in November due to the COVID-19 pandemic as an excuse to delegitimize the election and refuse to yield the power in the event that he loses. I think it's a fair point to raise as to whether or not, if he loses, he's going to go quietly or not. We have to be ready for that, she cautioned. But there have been so many academic studies and other analyses that point out that it's just an inaccurate, fraudulent claim. There isn't that problem, as a West Virginia mail carrier is being prosecuted for vote-by-mail fraud. Clinton added, all the games that are played and all the photo IDs and any kind of restriction that can be imposed to try and keep the vote down in places that aren't going to vote for Republicans, that's the real danger to the integrity of our elections. That combined with misinformation and disinformation and all the online shenanigans that we saw in 2016. Clinton concluded her thoughts on voter suppression and Trump potentially refusing to yield power by saying that, above all, she simply wants a fair and honest election in which she wins the presidency. I want a fair election. If people get to vote for, and they, for whatever reason, vote for Donald Trump, okay, we'll accept that, even though we haven't accepted it yet in the last 4 years. Not happily, she said with a laugh. But I don't think that's what will happen, because I think the more people that can get to the polls, whether by mail or in person, and get their votes counted, then we're going to have the kind of election we should have. And it'll be a win both in the popular vote and the Electoral College. Later in the interview, Clinton pulled no punches when talking about Trump's response to the coronavirus pandemic, making clear she blames his lack of leadership for the U.S. having some of the highest infection rates. I can't read any more of this. I can't. But it's just rich for the fact that Hillary Clinton is saying that you have to worry about Trump not ceding power if he doesn't win the election, after she went through years of trying to push Russian collusion and a Russian hoax down through the avenues of Congress. Oh my God, I can't even believe that. I want a fair election. What a bunch of fucking shit. She knows something. Something. She is going to be the nominee. I bet you. I will bet you anything. She's going to be the nominee. With the fact that she's coming up, being back in the spotlight again, she got what appears to be a massive facelift, so she looks a little bit younger and more appealing and more grandmotherly. Like, oh, she's going to do something with this. So we'll keep watching that. All right. From the Associated Press, White House-backed campaign pushes alternate career paths from Dailene Superville. Presidential advisor Ivanka Trump on Tuesday unveiled a White House-backed national ad campaign highlighting alternative ways to start a career, an initiative targeting students, mid-career workers, and the millions of people who are now unemployed because of the coronavirus. Called Find Something New, the campaign was backed by Apple Incorporated and IBM Incorporated. It was quickly bashed on social media as being tone-deaf and inadequate for the times. The Trump administration has long emphasized skills-based jobs and vocational training as an alternative to 2- and 4-year college degree programs for high school graduates, arguing that college isn't for everyone and that a degree isn't required for many jobs. The campaign has been in the works for some time, but gained new urgency after efforts to slow the coronavirus outbreak left millions of people unemployed. Ivanka Trump said President Donald Trump has been talking about alternate career paths since the beginning of the administration, in part because of growing automation. Now, as a result of COVID, people need to, unfortunately in some cases, learn a completely new skill, Ivanka Trump said, referring to COVID-19, the disease the virus causes. She cast it as an opportunity for people to get on a new trajectory and said, "We want to facilitate that connection back to the workforce and make it as smooth as possible." Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, said the effort is all well and good, but added that the White House and Congress must do more. For tens of millions of American workers slammed by the pandemic, it's about finding something at all, Zandi said in an email. He urged both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue to pass another economic aid package to help those who are out of work or working fewer hours and to prevent additional job losses and higher unemployment. Ginny Rometty, IBM's executive chairman, said during the announcement that the campaign will help encourage companies to embrace skills-first hiring, as her company has done. "Don't just look at a degree, but look at skills someone has and let them get started," she said. Apple CEO Tim Cook said it was particularly important during a time of racial strife to connect people with resources that can help them find well-paying jobs and build lasting careers. That mission has never been more urgent than now. And I'm with the president and his daughter on this one. I really do mean, I mean, look at where I'm at right now. Just to use my own anecdote, but there are millions of other people out there like this. I started going to school to teach, which gladly I didn't go into that because then I'd be sitting in a union, probably voting Democrat, and probably with blue hair and carrying one of these stupid-ass signs right now. So thank God I didn't go into that, but I moved up and I saw engineering as a more viable point, but at that point I was looking at school, looking at the fact that I wasn't really learning anything in school, and went out for a trade instead. I went to mechanic school, worked on the floor for a little while, got hurt, started working at the parts counter instead. Now I'm working shipping and receiving at something, and doing this and trying to make a website successful so I can stop working at a dealership and continue to bring news to you guys every day, because this is what I love to. If you'd have told me, 18-year-old me, that I would be sitting in front of a webcam with a microphone in front of me and hoping to try and make a living that way, I would have laughed in your face. But here I sit, in front of a microphone, reading the news to you guys every morning. People don't need to be, yes, you spent a lot of money for college, which was probably your downfall to begin with, but even with that, it's okay to go out and explore something else, especially if either your job is being eliminated or you're just not satisfied with what you're doing anymore. It's important to be fluid out there, to be able to learn new skills, go down new paths, and take advantage of changing technology as we go down the path. I'm looking at other websites right now. I'm looking at mines. I'm looking maybe at TikTok. Well, not TikTok because it's Chinese spyware, but trying to get into that market somewhere. Technology is changing, and we need to take advantage of it as we go along. And the people who are just going to stay in one job because that's what they went to school for, or that's what they've been doing forever, are going to fall behind when technology changes. So I am all for this campaign, as toned up as everybody else says it sounds, especially when millions of people are unemployed. and need to go find more work. All right, let's keep going here. I got a couple things on this Tuberville election. One is direct and one is a little bit indirect, and we'll talk a bit about what's happening coming up for next year. But let's start with actually seeing what happened in Alabama. From Fox News, Tommy Tuberville defeats Jeff Sessions in Alabama GOP Senate primary runoff from Paul Steinhauser. Tommy Tuberville and President Trump are the winners in Tuesday's Republican Senate primary runoff in Alabama. Tuberville, a first-time politician and former Auburn University football coach, defeated former U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions thanks in part to an endorsement from the president. The Associated Press projected Tuberville as the winner of the election about 90 minutes after the polls closed in Alabama. Sessions, who was fighting for his political life, was also fending off the ire of the president. He served a dozen years as senator from Alabama before becoming Trump's first attorney general in 2017. But Sessions angered the president by recusing himself that year from the Russia investigation into the 2016 election. Sessions, who was the first Republican senator to back Trump in the 2016 presidential election, was forced out as attorney general in November of 2018. Since then, he's repeatedly been a public punching bag for Trump. Tuberville, who didn't debate Sessions, didn't miss an opportunity to showcase Trump's endorsement. On the eve of the primary, he tweeted out an audio clip of the president touting that Tuberville would have a call direct line from my office. He now advances to the November general election to take on Senator Doug Jones, who is the most vulnerable Democrat in the Senate in this year's general election. The Republicans are looking to hold on to their 53-47 majority in the Senate, and Alabama could prove to be a real shot at flipping a Democrat-held seat. Soon after the AP called the race, the president tweeted that Tuberville won big against Jeff Sessions. It will be a great senator for the incredible people of Alabama. And Trump claimed that Jones is a terrible senator who's just a super liberal puppet for Schumer and Pelosi, Chuck and Nancy. Sessions stressed during the campaign that it wasn't up to Washington to dictate the election in Alabama. The president can endorse who he wishes, he repeatedly said, but the people of Alabama will choose and decide this race. On Saturday, after Trump tweeted that Jeff Sessions is a disaster who has let us all down, we don't want him back in Washington, Sessions returned fire, calling Trump's tweets juvenile insults and emphasizing that Alabama does not take orders from Washington. Although Sessions went on the attack against Tuberville on a range of issues, the former football coach refused to engage. On the eve of the primary, veteran Alabama-based Republican political consultant Angie Stelnaker told Fox News Jeff Sessions allowed the narrative to become Jeff Sessions versus Donald Trump. Tommy Tuberville really has nothing to do with this race at all. He's not making speeches. He's not doing debates. His only argument is Donald Trump likes me. If you light a poll, or if a light poll had a run against Jeff Sessions, Donald Trump would have endorsed the light poll. Fact check true. I like that. And she emphasized that in a state where Trump remains extremely popular among Republicans, Team Tuberville is going to be the beneficiary of that very, very flawed mistake. Until Tuesday's runoff, the president had been 0 for 2 in Alabama Senate races. In the 2017 special election to complete Sessions' term as senator, the president endorsed and campaigned for Senator Luther Strange, who was defeated in the GOP primary by conservative firebrand Roy Moore. 2 months later, Trump backed Moore, a former Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice, who was facing multiple manufactured sexual misconduct allegations, including one from a girl who was 14 at the time of the alleged and probably unsubstantiated assault. Moore denied the allegations. Here's a funny thing about that situation and that story that went off of there. Hey, when's the last time you heard about Roy Moore? Did he face any sort of justice from this? Did they actually make an allegation and take him to court? Did they pull him out in front of a grand jury? Has anybody said a word about Roy Moore since he lost the election? No, because it's not politically convenient anymore. They had nothing on Roy Moore, and they knew it. But they knew that they could come out and they could make up a story that said Roy Moore liked to prowl for little girls. And it would cause people not to vote for him. I fear what kind of dirt is going to come out against people coming up in this election. Just based on what they did to Roy Moore. And like I said, they were not interested in taking him to court to giving him a fair trial or anything else. They tried him in the court of public opinion just enough to get him down there and lose the race to Doug Jones. And you never heard a word about it again until now in the new Senate race. So congratulations to Tuberville, a freshman politician, which is my favorite kind of politician. It's hard because I don't really like politicians, but freshman politicians are my favorite because they'll go in and they'll kick one of these establishment types out of the office. So good job on that. All right. From the Daily Wire, Nancy Pelosi endorses Ilhan Omar as freshman Dem falls millions of dollars behind challenger, from Tim Pierce. That's because she's paying it all to her husband. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi endorsed Representative Ilhan Omar on Monday ahead of the primary election, in which the freshman Democrat is trailing financially by millions of dollars. Ilhan is a valued and important member of our caucus, Pelosi said in a statement, according to the Jewish Telegraph Agency. In her first term, Ilhan has already established herself as a leader on a host of issues, from child nutrition to housing to U.S.-Africa relations. Omar is being challenged by Minnesota attorney Anton Melton Moe in a race that has caught the attention of pro-Israel America and NORPAC. The pro-Israel political action committees have committed hundreds of thousands of dollars to unseating Omar, one of the most anti-Israel members of Congress, ahead of the August 11th primary. Wait, is this Tim Pierce writing this, or is this Ben Shapiro? Because I just read Israel like 7 times in a single sentence. No, it's Tim Pierce. From April to the end of June, Melton Moe outraised Omar by a staggering $3.2 million to under $500,000. Melton Moe's campaign still has $2 million cash on hand versus Omar's $1.1 million, according to the Minnesota Star-Tribune. Omar has a history of making comments widely viewed as anti-Semitic, including by Pelosi. In February 2019, Pelosi and other Democratic leaders called on Omar to apologize for a tweet that said, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby," suggesting that Israel or pro-Israel groups have paid off House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Congresswoman Omar's use of anti-Semitic tropes and prejudicial accusations about Israel's supporters is deeply offensive, Pelosi said in a statement, knowing full well that she's getting the same kind of payoffs from the same people. Omar is one of very few members of Congress that support the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement that calls for the United States to cut off all aid to Israel. Melton Moe has attracted support from pro-Israel and conservative groups for his staunch support of U.S.-Israel relationship, according to the Star-Tribune. So, yeah, well, especially in this world and with the way that our news runs and the way that tinfoil conspiracy goes around as well, you can't really be that openly anti-Israel in Congress and expect to win a second term. It just doesn't work. But she'll be sitting off all that money that Tim Pierce is making that she's laundered through him. So she's going to come out. I can't believe she's actually this far behind, because all she has to do is go take that laundered money and go stick it back in her campaign. But she can't raise it anymore. Yeah, she was a bad one. I can't believe AOC managed to get herself re-primaried and win her primary up there. But, I mean, Ilhan Omar has been toxic even to Democrats. And, like, I know Minnesotans. I can't believe they elected this woman in the first place. But they did. So we'll see what happens in, when is this primary? I don't even know. August 11th. So we'll see what happens next month from this, and then what happens in November. All right. Doug Shane. Trump is big winner and Sessions is big loser in Tuesday primaries, while Democrats remain divided. This is an opinion piece. There are 2 key takeaways from the outcome of Tuesday's primaries in Alabama, Maine, and Texas. First, the big winner of the night was President Trump. Several Trump-backed candidates defeated their opponents and unquestionably benefited significantly from the president's support. The most notable of these was former Auburn University football coach Tommy Tuberville, who defeated the former Senator and Attorney General Jeff Sessions for the GOP nomination for a U.S. Senate seat in Alabama. Tuberville will face Democratic Senator Doug Jones, considered a highly vulnerable incumbent. Second, Democratic primary results show the party is deeply divided, complicating the Democrats' path to winning majority control of the Senate and defeating Trump in the November election. Alabama was the biggest race Tuesday, and of special interest to Trump, the president forced out Sessions as Attorney General after Sessions recused himself from overseeing the investigation of Russia's interference in the 2016 election. The presidential election, a decision Sessions said he was required to make because he had been involved in the Trump campaign, Trump never forgave Sessions and the recusal, or for the recusal rather, and considered it to be a betrayal. Honestly, I'm pretty sure Sessions was right on that particular one. And Sessions is kind of an asshole. I've seen him do other speeches and everything else, and just this little slap fight that he had with Trump this time. Sessions is kind of an ass. But he was in the right to recuse himself from that because he did work with the campaign. He was absolutely 100% in the right for that. In his bid to regain the Senate seat, he resigned to become Trump's Attorney General. Sessions faced fierce opposition from the president, who repeatedly criticized him with harsh insults and actively supported Tuberville. Trump's endorsements clearly carried more weight with voters than Sessions' endorsement from prominent Republicans and his former Republican Senate colleagues, including Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama. Meanwhile, in Texas, former White House physician Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who was endorsed by Trump, won his primary for a U.S. House seat, beating out Josh Weingarner. Weingarner was endorsed by the outgoing Republican Mac Thornberry, who did not seek re-election. In many ways, the weights of Trump endorsement in Alabama and Texas signals that the president's current chances for re-election may be stronger than the national polls indicate. On the Democrat side, Tuesday's primaries represented another test for the National Party, which is struggling to mobilize its base while finding ways to unite progressives and moderates around the message that unites, rather than further polarizes a divided country. In several U.S. House and Senate Democratic primaries held in June, progressive challengers either defeated or came close to nearly defeating their well-funded establishment opponents. Likewise, the division between progressive and moderate factions of the party was manifest in Tuesday's primaries. In the Texas Democratic primary runoff for Senate, Air Force veteran M.J. Heger and the establishment-backed candidate, who was endorsed by Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, narrowly defeated Royce West, an underfunded progressive insurgent candidate. Hagar's narrow win will make it more difficult to unite the Democratic Party in the race against Republican Senator John Cornyn in November. Similarly, this was the case in Kentucky's Democratic primary for the Senate held in June. Establishment-backed candidate Amy McGrath barely beat the progressive insurgent candidate Charles Booker, who had less than half the financial resources of McGrath. And we also have a libertarian that's running in that race as well. So that's going to pull votes off of both. Given the clear progressive insurgency within the Democratic Party across the country, there will also likely be greater pressure on the party to embrace the left-leaning policies such as defunding the police, which are unpopular with the general electorate. Doing so could cost the Democrats the presidency, the Senate, and even their current House majority. And yes, there is some major division going on over on the left. But the other thing we have to look at, especially looking into this, is the fact that we look back at all the primaries that Trump was entered in, and we don't have numbers right now for the primaries that Trump was running unopposed in. But when we saw people, when he was actually being opposed, we looked at the numbers of people coming out to primary vote, and he was getting bigger numbers, bigger turnout than all the Democrats combined in some of these states. People are excited to come out and vote for Trump, even if he's running unopposed. And they will come out in massive numbers to do so. I don't think that these polls are real. I think they're rigged to try and keep people complacent and keep them at home. So we'll see what happens off of this. I like this analysis, and I'm actually going to bookmark it. So let's keep going, though. A little bit more infighting coming from the DNC. Cuomo shreds AOC's claim that crime surged due to trouble paying rent. You cannot be evicted right now, from the Daily Wire News. New York's Democratic Governor Andy Cuomo shredded Representative Cortez, claimed this week that the surge in crime around the city was due to people being scared to pay rent. And we read this already. A reporter asked Cuomo during a press conference on Monday what he thought about Ocasio-Cortez's comments. I don't know what she said, so I have no comment on what she said. But people have theories, Cuomo began. An incoherent theory doesn't wind up being correct because there's a void. Melissa DeRosa, secretary to Cuomo, jumped in saying, on the rent issue specifically, though, as I'm sure you all remember, the governor did an executive order back in March that said there couldn't be any evictions on commercial or residential rent due through June. We then extended that for anyone who has COVID hardship related through the end of August, DeRosa continued. In the interim, the legislature passed legislation that you can't be up for any rent evictions during this crisis, which is a bill that we signed, I think, a week and a half ago. And so I'm not sure how it could square that it's people that are not able to pay rent when right now there are no evictions on the table legally. Cuomo then jumped back in, adding, yeah, it's factually impossible that someone committed a crime so they could pay their rent. If you can't pay your rent, you cannot be evicted right now. So that is the transcript of the video there below. So I'll leave that in the Discord for you guys to go and check out. But yeah, they don't know what to do with each other, and they're two very, very different parties at work inside the Democratic Party. And they expect to bring their party together and win in November. And I don't see where it comes from. I don't see where they get their confidence from, other than the fact that the news has told everybody that Orange Man bad for the last 5 years. It's the only thing that I can think of. Alright, we got a few more here, and then we're going to do a thing that I'm thankful for. So, battle brewing on coronavirus relief oversight, because they are going to impeach this guy once again. From Alexander Bolton. A lack of oversight for more than $2 trillion in COVID-19 spending approved by Congress is creating uncertainty about whether relief programs are working as planned, adding a new layer of complications to the next coronavirus package. The 3 independent oversight panels set up by Congress in the Bipartisan CARES Act almost 4 months ago have all encountered serious obstacles, sometimes because of resistance from the White House, other times due to drafting oversights in the authorizing legislation. As a result, lawmakers and the public may not have full understanding of how coronavirus relief aid is being spent until after the election. In the meantime, Congress and the White House are moving toward another pandemic bill that's expected to carry a price tag of at least $1 trillion. One of the latest flashpoints to emerge is the implementation of the $660 billion Paycheck Protection Program, an initiative designed to keep extending forgivable loans to small businesses during the pandemic to keep workers on the payroll. We don't have a full picture from the information that we've received so far. It's hard to say whether the program is working, said Lyd Hempowicz, Director of Public Policy at the Project on Government Oversight, a watchdog group. She said recently released government figures for the program are inadequate. In the PPP loan data, the administration is claiming that they know how many jobs have been retained under this program and how many jobs that have been saved, but there's no way for the government to know that, she said, noting that numbers just represent how many people are employed by those entities and that got those loans rather than how many jobs have been supported by the program. The CARES Act, signed into law on March 27th, set up 3 oversight arms: the Special Inspector General for Pandemic Recovery, tasked with overseeing coronavirus spending, the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee, an interagency panel designed to promote cooperation among the various inspectors general, and a special congressional oversight commission. Each entity quickly encountered hurdles. The Pandemic Response Accountability Committee has not received the spending data that some lawmakers thought it would when they voted for the CARES Act, which mandated that PPP recipients report in detail how many jobs were saved or created because of federal assistance. For the SIGPR, staffing up is a problem. The Inspector General doesn't have the authority to speed up the lengthy government hiring process. Critics also argue that while SIGPR has subpoena power, it has limited authority over criminal matters. While it can issue search warrants, the SIGPR must refer criminal activity to the Justice Department for prosecution. President Trump undercut the oversight process from the get-go when he attached a signing statement to the CARES Act declaring his administration would not allow the SIGPR to issue reports to Congress without presidential supervision. Trump also blocked Glenn Fine, the then acting IG of the Defense Department, from serving as a chairman of the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee, a move that critics warned could be seen as having a chilling effect on the panel's independence. The third oversight body, a 5-member Congressional Oversight Commission, still doesn't have a leader, hampering its ability to staff up. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Speaker Nancy Pelosi were reportedly eyeing former Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Joseph Dunford for the job, but he removed himself from consideration on Tuesday. So they're going to go back and they're just going to inspect themselves and investigate themselves over and over again. And they're going to try and impeach again. Maybe not before the election. I think they're going to focus all their effort up onto that. Oh, maybe. They might actually go out and try and impeach him again coming up to the election so they can hold the impeachment over his head up until the election and say, okay, well, no, look, he's impeached. We're impeaching him again. Why would you vote for this guy? The rest of this year is going to be crazy. It's going to be absolutely crazy, and I hope you guys are all holding onto your seats for it. All right, from Fox 35 News out of Orlando. Fox 35 investigates. Florida Department of Health says some labs have not reported negative COVID-19 results. From Robert Guadarrama. After Fox 35 News noticed errors in the state's report on positivity rates, the Florida Department of Health said that some laboratories have not been reporting negative test results data to the state. Countless labs have reported a 100% positivity rate, which means every single person tested was positive. Other labs have had a very high positivity rates. Fox 35 News found that testing sites, like one local CentraCare, reported that 83 people were tested and all tested positive. Then NCF Diagnostics in Alachua reported 88% of tests were positive. How could that be? Fox 35 News investigated these astronomical numbers, contacting every local location mentioned in the report. The report showed that Orlando Health had a 98% positivity rate. However, when Fox 35 News contacted the hospital, they confirmed errors in the report. Orlando's health positivity rate is only 9.4%, not 98% as in the report. The report also showed that Orlando's Veterans Medical Center has a positivity rate of 76%. The spokesperson for the VA told the Fox 35 News on Tuesday that this does not reflect their numbers and that the positivity rate for the center is actually 6%. Fox 35 News went on to speak with Florida Department of Health on Tuesday. They confirmed that although private and public laboratories are required to report positive and negative results to the state immediately, some have not. Specifically, they said that some smaller private labs were not reporting negative result test data to the state. The department immediately began working on those labs to ensure that all results are being reported in order to provide comprehensive and transparent data. The spokesperson for Florida Department of Health said, as the state continues to receive results from various labs, the department will continue educating these labs on proper protocol for reporting COVID-19 test results. They're cooking the numbers after everything that we saw the last time that this was an issue. The funding that we got and special interest trying to make sure that we stay down forever. They're cooking the fucking numbers. You don't say. I can't believe they're actually cooking the numbers. I can't believe other people have another agenda on this coronavirus thing. I can't believe okay, I can't keep up that sarcasm anymore. So yes, it appears that Florida is cooking the numbers to try and make it look much, much worse than it actually is. And thank you to Seawall over in the Discord for bringing this article to my attention. I thought it was very interesting. All right, we just got a couple more here, and then we are going to do a thing that I'm thankful for. From the Daily Wire, riots, violent crime, defund the police, push surged in June. Gun sales exploded to all-time high, FBI data suggests. From Ryan Saavedra, the number of FBI background checks conducted last month for people attempting to purchase firearms shattered the previous all-time record, and experts say the surge in gun sales was directly tied to current events rocking the United States. The new coronavirus pandemic, civil unrest after the killing of George Floyd, and the ensuing movement to defund police are bringing in new buyers worried about their personal safety. According to buyers, store owners, and gun experts, the Wall Street Journal reported. In June, background checks for firearms were up 136% compared to a year earlier. Background checks in June for civilians seeking a license to carry were the highest since the FBI began conducting checks 20 years ago. FBI statistics that were released in the start of the month showed that 3,931,607 background checks were processed last month, which is by far the most ever recorded. The previous all-time record was set in March when parts of the U.S. began going into shutdown over the coronavirus, when 3,740,688 were conducted. Good for you, America. Good for you. Your first line of defense is yourself, and I expect everybody to be armed to the teeth for a very long time, because an armed society is a polite society. The Journal reports that dealers estimate that some 40% of sales have been going to first-time buyers, an increase over the normal average of about a quarter. And says that many of the new buyers are people who say they never thought they would own a firearm and were previously critical of those who did. The surge in gun sales comes as the U.S. has experienced a wave of violent riots in response to the death of George Floyd that have spanned from Los Angeles to New York City and ultimately led to calls from leftist activists and Democratic politicians to defund the police. Violent crime has surged in inner cities in the days and weeks following the riots and demonizing of law enforcement officials. Social media was flooded with images of rioters destroying police cars that were abandoned by law enforcement officials, looters stealing items from stores, and criminals attacking law enforcement officials by hurling objects at them and even running them over. One gun buyer told the Journal that he was applying for a permit because he feared that law enforcement officials would not be able to protect him, saying, "I don't want to ever shoot anybody ever, but if I had to duck and shoot back in self-defense, at least I'd have a chance." Good for you. That's exactly the attitude that you need to have. John Kingdon, a registered Democrat who has been a gun control activist in the past, told the paper that he purchased a semi-automatic pistol just a couple of months ago, saying, "If I had a hard time getting police to respond to me when we weren't in a pandemic, what about now?" British media personality Piers Morgan, who opposes the Second Amendment, derided the surge in Americans engaging in their constitutionally protected right, writing on Twitter, "Just when you thought the news couldn't be more depressing, 8.3 million guns have been sold in the United States since March, meaning 2020 is on course to be the biggest year for gun sales in history." Yes, because we don't have a king here, and when the government comes and steps down on us, we're going to step back. See that? That's what gun sales mean in this country, right there. All right, let's keep going on to this, but this makes me happy. From CNN, an advertisement. Burger King's latest sustainability effort, reduce cow farts. And I haven't seen the commercial yet, but I know that was into this. But yeah, they're going right down the Green New Deal, and I don't feel bad anymore for not spending money with Burger King. I don't care how goddamn good the burgers are. Burger King is improving its cow's low-carb diet by adding 100 grams of lemongrass to reduce methane emissions, aka cow farts. Did you really think that this election cycle, 2018 to now, would be revolving around cow farts? Because I didn't. Once again, if you'd have told me back in 2015 that we'd be talking constantly about cow farts in 2020, I'd have told you were a fucking idiot. But here we are. The new diet plan will curtail methane emissions from cows by 33% per day, according to Burger King. Those emissions are one of the key contributors to climate change because of the gas traps the sun's heat and warms it. The restaurant brand's international-owned company said the new lemongrass-fed beef will be used in Whoppers at some restaurants in Austin, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, and Portland beginning Tuesday. Burger King said the new formula is open source and it's fairly simple to implement, and the company worked on it with professors from the Autonomous University at the state of Mexico and University of California, Davis. Lemongrass is purported to help cows release less methane during the digestion process. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, around 50 to 65% of all methane emissions come from human activities, including factory farming. The whole industry, from farmers to meat suppliers and other brands, join us. We can increase scale and collectively help reduce methane emissions that affect climate change, said Fernando Machado, Global Chief Marketing Officer for Restaurant Brands International, in a statement. Burger King has previously used its flagship menu to promote sustainability and health initiatives. In February, an ad campaign was released featuring a moldy Whopper to highlight its efforts to eliminate artificial preservatives and other additives from the company's menu. It's aiming for all the foods to be free of artificial ingredients by the end of this year, and I don't care. I'm not spending money at Burger King anymore. Like I said, the burger is good, and if they had changed the diet on their own, like if they'd just gone out to the farms and said, okay, we're changing the diet, I might be getting to a point where I'd have been past the chick fries thing where I might have eaten there again. I was getting there because I've been having a hankering for Burger King burgers. I was getting to the point where I'm like, you know what? They made their mistake. They cleaned up. They haven't done stupid shit again. Maybe I'll go and have one more burger from there. And then this shit comes out. And once again, if it hadn't been for the fact that if they hadn't announced it, I wouldn't have cared. And none of you would have noticed. I guarantee you, those of you who eat Burger King, you would have never noticed the difference. But no, they had to jump up on their soapbox and try to be the most woke progressive burger chain out there. And now I'm not going to go spend my money with them. So, good job with that. And that commercial is coming out. I didn't put the commercial on the stack. I know we're going to talk about it, I think, coming up this week, if it doesn't get bumped from other things. So, but yes, Burger King, the wokest fast food place in all the world. All right, last one that I have here. And this is kind of a down note, so we're going to go from this into something that I'm thankful for. Daniel Lewis Lee executed after Supreme Court clears the way for first federal execution in 17 years. From Ariane DeVogue, Shandelis Duster, and David Shortell over at CNN. Daniel Lee Lewis, a convicted killer, was executed Tuesday morning in the first federal execution in 17 years after the Supreme Court issued an overnight ruling that it could proceed. Lee was pronounced dead by the coroner at 8:07 a.m. Eastern Time in Terre Haute, Indiana. His last words were, "I didn't do it. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I'm not a murderer. You're killing an innocent man," according to a pool report. The Supreme Court cleared the way for the resumption of the federal death penalty in an unsigned order released after 2 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. The court wiped away a lower court order temporarily blocking the execution of Lee in a 5-4 vote. How could they have a 5-4 vote if Ginsburg was in the hospital last night? Lee, a one-time white supremacist who killed a family of 3, was scheduled to be executed Monday. A federal judge blocked the planned execution of Lee and 3 others, citing ongoing challenges to the federal government's lethal injection protocol. Ruth Friedman, Lee's attorney, said in a statement Tuesday, "It is shameful that the government saw fit to carry out this execution during a pandemic." What the fuck does a pandemic have to do with anything? He's gonna die anyway. It is shameful that the government saw fit to carry out this execution when counsel for Danny Lee could not be present with him, and that when judges in his case and even family of his victims urged against it, Friedman said. It is beyond shameful that the government, in the end, carried out this execution in haste, in the middle of the night, while the country was sleeping. We hope that upon awakening, the country will be as outraged as we are. So, first off, of course, none of us, other than the family that he killed, and he himself, knows what actually happened. But it is to my understanding that he was tried by a jury of his peers, evidence came out, and the jury of his peers came out in a unanimous decision that he was guilty. And then after several appeals and sitting on death row forever, it was also determined that he was still guilty. If he did this, then he deserves what he got. Once again, none of us know that except for the people that were there. But enough jurors and appeals courts have said that he did this. An appeal seeking to delay the execution that involved the family of Lee's victims who were concerned about traveling and going to a federal prison during the coronavirus pandemic was also denied by the Supreme Court in an order Tuesday morning. Erlaine Peterson, whose daughter, granddaughter, and son-in-law were tortured, killed, and dumped in a lake by Lee and an accomplice, has opposed Lee's execution, telling CNN last year that she did not want it done in her name. Baker Curris, an attorney for the victim's family, told CNN Tuesday morning the family's heartbroken and said the government prevented them from being there and family did everything they could to be there. The Supreme Court said in its ruling that death row inmates, including Lee, bringing the case have not established that they are likely to succeed in their challenge, in part because the one-drug protocol proposed by the government, single-dose pentobarbital, has become mainstay of state executions. Attorney General William Barr Sudley finally faced the justice he deserved. So this actually came to my attention from listening to one of our local affiliates, a local AM affiliate, WIBA. I listen to that usually on my way to work. The host did an Unhinged Liberal of the Day segment that he does every morning, and it usually pops up while I'm on my way to work, in which one of the judges, one of the lower court judges, came out and tried to stay this execution because the person might feel fear and pain after the fear and pain receptor shut off in the brain because of the way that the drug affects the body in suffocation. But yes, when did this happen? This happened yesterday, obviously. When did the murder happen? It doesn't say when the murder happened, but I mean, as much bureaucracy as you have to go through death row in this country, he has had plenty of time to appeal to this and try and get himself out there. And of course, you'll know in prison, you'll know you're in prison because nobody did what they're in there for. If you just ask them, none of them actually did it. So the justice has been served. He got what was prescribed to him by the court for what he did. And I don't understand what the fuss is about. I mean, in Texas, they're putting an express lane in. If you really tortured these people and dumped them in a lake, then yes, you deserve the lethal injection. But it's worth noting that this is the first time since, 2003, this is the first time we've also had a federal execution. But that's all that I'm going to have for news today, so this is going to be it. And because it's Wednesday, we will end the day with something that I'm thankful for. And I know I cite my parents all the time on this show, over on the podcast and everything else, but my parents raised me very well. So I'm very appreciative to them, and I wouldn't be sitting here today if I'd have been raised in any other way, because I learned to be outspoken, I learned to do research, sit and take all the facts, instead of just taking what the mainstreams tell us. And I was raised to be analytical. And like I said, I wouldn't be here if not for them. So, during the COVID pandemic, my parents live in a very small town. I actually live in a rural area outside of a very small town, and my mom has worked at the same small town diner since it opened. They closed during COVID, and the people that ran the place could never be certain as to when they were going to open the diner back up. They could never wrap their heads around when they were going to do so, how they were going to do so, how they were going to distance, because it's a small dining room. I used to work in the same diner. They could never get to it, so my mom just never went back to work. They kept telling her, well, it's going to happen soon, it's going to happen soon, it's going to happen soon. Well, a few weeks ago, my mother decided enough was enough, and it was time to go seek out something else, and was hired almost immediately on the spot, pretty much just filling out the paperwork as a formality, at another small diner in a couple towns over. So my mother is back to work. So for now, my parents are back to a two-income household, which I'm thankful for. I really am, because I was getting worried for quite a while there as we were going on and just looking through the COVID pandemic, what unemployment was going to do, what was going to happen when it ran out, and how it was going to affect them. So my mom is back to work, and I'm very thankful for that. And, even still, working in a small town, getting a new job at 60 years old has got to be a challenge for anybody. So good for her, and I'm very glad to see that. But that is going to be it for the day. So we will be back here tomorrow with more contemporary. We will have plenty more news, I'm sure, because it's an election year. It did seem like a little bit of a slow news day, but we still filled over an hour off of this, so there was plenty of it. And we'll see much more tomorrow. And tonight is going to be, so if you guys listen back on the audio platform at all, prepare for a dump, because tonight I'm going to get caught up with everything, including all of this week's contemporaries. The last two episodes of the Red and Ed Show and the final episode of Ed's World are all going to show up on the audio platforms yet tonight. I'm going to stay up tonight and I'm going to do it. So go check out your audio platform tonight. Other than that, we will be back here tomorrow for more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.